choosing our session. I think before we dive straight in, it'd be great to see like a show of hands of who is primarily a B2B marketer and who is primarily a B2C marketer.
Oh, so interesting.
So of the others, I'd say it's about 50-50 in the audience from what I could see, would you say? So it's interesting. So my factoid about B2B, just to kind of focus our minds, is that if you look at the Interbrand global leading brands, 16 of the top 20 brands have a considerable, significant B2B element of their operation. And if you look at the top 50 of those global brands, about 1/5 of them are pure play B2B. So, and as you see the rise and the fall of the value of those brands, B2B in these confusing times seems to be gathering a pace and gathering much more value versus B2C brands. I'm obviously slightly biased on that front because I'm 100% B2B. So just kicking off and trying to kind of define some of the differences between B2B and B2C. Shanna, from your point of view, like what are some of the differentiators and what are some of the kind of popular misconceptions that people have about B2B versus B2C?
Yeah, thanks, Liam. I think when you think about inspirational marketing campaigns, a couple come to mind. You know, it's Nike, Dream Crazy, Dove, Real Beauty, Chipotle, Back to the Start. All of these campaigns really come to mind as something that's resonant with us as consumers, tugs on our heartstrings, frankly is sexy. And as marketers, it's really, it's a pull. We often get pulled into wanting to work on these kinds of sexy, fun campaigns. So I would say that's the first misconception around B2B, in that it can't be sexy or it's not fun or it's boring. And from my perspective, some of the key differences around B2B marketing, you know, you're selling larger ticket products and items across an enterprise to multiple buyers and influencers whose motivations change, you know, all the time, and the players change. You know, the sales cycle is longer, and actually a lot of data points point to that buy being really emotional, and sometimes even more emotional than, you know, a consumer buying sneakers, for example. You know, I think if you're like me and you like to solve complex marketing challenges, B2B is definitely not boring.
Okay, so it's a cerebral.
Yes.
Rather than sexy, it's cerebral.
Yes, exactly.
And so, Noah, from your experience, like obviously you've worked at Facebook with lots and lots of brands across technology and across the financial services sector. You know, what experiences have you had that show that kind of that difference, and what is the common misconception that people have about B2B?
Yeah, something actually that I want to touch on, you know, Shanna, I loved what you said about that these things can be sexy, they can be interesting to work on. Before I got to Facebook, I was in data science and statistics, and I was a huge fanboy of all of like the B2B tools that I used. And I think one misconception is that people who are in the marketing side of that business don't always necessarily see how passionate the end user is really about these products and how excited they can be when there's a new release or some new feature comes out. So they can be hugely fun to work on from that perspective. One big misconception that I've seen in my world is that people still think that there's this really like sharp divide in terms of the customer and how they consume B2B versus B2C content. That like some platforms are only for B2B, some platforms are only for B2C. And the reality is that mobile has completely broken that down and forced us to really rethink what we see as like a contextual marketing channel in the B2B world. To give an example from Facebook, so I joined Facebook in 2012, and back then we were mostly desktop, and nobody, including me, believed that like B2B had some big place on our platform. Over time, we saw more B2B advertisers testing things, finding success on the platform. We launched a B2B specific product called Lead Ads a few years ago. It's like a form fill product. And we realized over the course of that time that we didn't actually have internally a good understanding of how business decision makers like behave on Facebook. And last year we ran a research study that showed that those people, business decision makers, IT decision makers, are actually some of like the most engaged people on the platform. They spend 75% more time on Facebook than the average user. They're 50% more likely to watch a product demo, and 30% more likely to actually share business content. So they're very engaged from a professional standpoint on these platforms. The other stat that paired with that was that these individuals also spend a lot more time on mobile than the average Facebook user, about 20% more time, which in raw numbers equated to roughly like 36 hours a month on average, that if you're a B2B buyer, that you're spending on mobile on Facebook. Those two stats, that mobile stat and these engagement stats, those two things, in my mind, are inextricably linked. They're really, one is causing the other. The fact is that if you're in a decision-making function in a business, you're probably managing most of your professional life through your phone, and then you get home and you're in your personal time, and you're also managing your personal life through your phone. And so business content, non-business content, all of it is being consumed in that space and discovered in that space. And it's opened up a lot of really interesting opportunities for marketers. But I still think there's a little bit of that misconception that these things are separate when really they're not. They're coming together.
So the landscape and the kind of media usage is shifting. Just thinking about that kind of landscape for a second and looking at what's had the biggest impact on you guys from a what your clients are seeing and what you're seeing from a go-to-market strategy. What's had the biggest influence of your last 12 months? What's taken up all of your time? And over the next 12 months, where will your attention be shifting? Shanna?
Yeah, well, since many of you are entering the B2B space, I think I'll just pause for a minute and talk about go-to-market strategy and how important that is as a step one in B2B. So I'm coming at it from a position of working at a startup, and perhaps some of you are as well. And it's a startup who is charging its own course. There is no playbook to replicate. There is no competitor to one-up. So that is step one, really, in having a solid go-to-market strategy. And just to give you kind of a glimpse in, when I first started with Ripple about 3 years ago, we didn't have any products in market. We had just decided we were going to target a specific customer segment. We aligned with product, we aligned with sales, we had some hypotheses, we had some marketing tactics out there, and we just started to go out and test and learn and listen and be open to evolving. And so that's what we have been doing. I would say more than 12 months, but definitely longer than that. But now it's to a point where we have so many insights and we've evolved so much further that our go-to-market strategy is literally the crux of where we start all of our, anchoring all of our marketing campaigns. It's the basis for account-based marketing.
There we go. We're 10 minutes in, and that's the first time.
ABM. I said it. I did it.
You'll have to take a drink now. ABM comes up.
Totally. It's the base for how we source our leads, how we route them, how we message them. It's actually the basis for how we compensate our sales and our customer success team. It's a huge input for our product roadmap. So, I just think it's important to really anchor there and continue to evolve and move there. I just can't emphasize how important it is and how much I've seen that really move the needle.
Noah?
Yeah, the past 12 months for me and the advertisers that I work with, a lot of it's been about B2B marketers realizing that they need a very clearly defined strategy for how they handle video, particularly in mobile. To give you a sense of why that's important, it's not just about like the ads looking good or just having video for the sake of video. It's all about performance. On a platform like Facebook and Instagram, people are scrolling through very quickly. You've got about 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention before they move past whatever you've put up there. And that means that probably you're going to need some kind of motion. You're going to need a video strategy to capture that attention. And what you put in that 3 seconds becomes extremely important. B2C had already done a lot of work, I think, the past couple of years, developing techniques specific to mobile that solve that problem. B2B had sort of just started leaning into this. A lot of the advertisers I work with kind of kicked off 2018 with very aggressive creative testing There was a big tech company that I worked with in 2018 that had a whole series of tests planned around what did they put in that first 3 seconds, and how does the performance in lead generation for that, that video content align to different audiences and different segments they were going after. It's a very data-driven strategy for creative. Something that Facebook ran also last year around June was we did a training at our headquarters in Menlo Park called Create to Connect, and it was all about B2B content and how do you take things like white papers and webinars and sort of rethink them for the mobile space, make them mobile friendly. We put that training together kind of on a hunch that this was something that the market wanted, just based on what we were seeing. And we got a great response from it. It sort of showed me that there really was a hunger there to dig into this area, that they know there's scale in mobile, they know that they can find the right customers there, but the content piece of it was a bit of a challenge. And that was partly us trying to help solve that. The next 12 months, I think are actually going to be a lot more about what happens after somebody clicks on an ad and they land on site. What I've seen at least, and maybe this is sample size of one, but a lot of B2B marketers are still designing conversion funnels and sort of conversion experiences and customer service experiences for desktop, and then kind of like pushing them into mobile and hoping that they can retrofit and make the site mobile responsive. I don't think that works particularly well. I haven't seen it work particularly well. What I have seen work well is when you design some kind of conversion flow or customer service experience, a lot of X's and S's in there, that is mobile friendly and sort of mobile first. Something that I've heard a lot from advertisers is, well, most people, they want to convert on desktop, they'll see an ad in mobile, but then they'll go to desktop to like sign up for a subscription. And to me, that's a little bit like you're in the summer, if you had like an ice cream store, and everyone's at the beach sweating and they want Rocky Road. It's a little bit like asking them to come to your shop to get the ice cream instead of just like loading it all onto a cart and bringing it to the beach where everybody's going to buy it.
So you kind of touched on it there that that there's an influence of B2C marketing on B2B and obviously vice versa. From a kind of B2C influencing B2B point of view, like what are you guys seeing as opportunities for us to, in the B2B world, to take some of the progress and some of the learnings and some of the initiatives from B2C and apply them to B2B? No?
Oh, I'm in the hot seat now. I'm going first. I actually think a lot of it is that. It's creating, B2C is really good at using data to create personalized experiences in marketing and in customer service and just in how you buy. Like a really, really good B2C, the buying experience is like borderline kind of delightful sometimes. Amazon has totally like ruined us, right? You go to Amazon and in one click you can like buy a year's worth of Tide or whatever. B2B, on the other hand, hasn't really mastered that yet. But I do think that there is space for it. Some of it has to do with the fact that activating that kind of personalized data in B2B is just challenging. It's a lot easier to do that in something like shoes where you have somebody's email and their phone number. In B2B, if you have firmographic data, not going to work the same way. One example, though, that jumps to mind for me in terms of something you could take from B2C and apply it to B2B actually comes from Lego, like the toy company, the Lego blocks. I think it was holiday season 2017, they did a project with us. This is a public case study. You can go online and read it. They built a bot on Facebook Messenger that you could reach through an ad. So you see an ad in feed, you click on it, it takes you to Messenger. And what the bot did was it was a gift selector. I don't know how many of you have ever bought a Lego set for a small child, but there's like 1 bajillion Lego sets. It's impossible to find a Lego set quickly. I have a 6-year-old son, so like this is very top of mind for me. And what the bot did was it wasn't some crazy artificial intelligence, it was just a set of menus. And it was like, how old is the person you're buying the gift for? How much do you want to spend? What are their interests? And even the interests were like very clearly laid out and said you could only select a couple, and how do they use Lego? And through that, after you filled that out, they spit out a gift for you. And the whole thing was like kind of fun. It was a little bit gamified. They got great performance out of that. I don't see why you couldn't take a solution like that and apply it to something like software, where there's all these different parameters about how you need that software to fit into your business, size of the business, the end user, what are you most concerned about? Is it CRM? Is it supply chain management? Is it productivity? Like, you could give someone a sort of selection experience in the same manner, and then they have an opportunity to give you some inputs in such a way that you can now sort of customize back to them, again, on a mobile device, like a recommendation. That's something I think B2C or B2B could take away from B2C and do some work there. What about you, Shanna? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think about, I'm always starting with understanding your customer. That's something I feel really passionate about. And if I think back to when I was doing B2C marketing, honestly, we spent months and months and months of time, tons of dollars in rooms, studying massive amounts of data to try to build a customer persona and a buying journey, and how are we going to meet that consumer where they are in their sales process with such specificity. I mean, honestly, I knew Bob and Glenn looked very similar similar demographically, almost identical, actually. Behaviorally, wow, were they different. You know, Glenn was a self-made man, and you know, he would not even hire anyone to mow his own lawn because only he could mow his lawn the way he wanted his lawn to be mowed. You know, and Bob, on the other hand, valued his partnerships and his family and, you know, and all of those relationships. And then kind of backing into how that impacted the customer journey really drove a lot of our decisions and our planning. You know, and then I kind of morph it into sort of the B2B world right now where, and some people will say personas are dead. I don't know if you've heard that, and that you should just follow the data. That's kind of one way, but it is more difficult to get that level of specificity within an organization and within not just a buyer, but all of the influencers who are influencing that buyer.
So is it complicated by the sheer number of decision makers that you would have to do that for? Or is it the fact that, you know, if you're going after a CIO, segmenting that CIO audience into 3 personas, it's a level of complexity. Is it have you tried it? Where have you got with it?
Well, it's interesting. We've taken a different approach. Instead of sitting in rooms with tons and tons of data and a lot of theory, we've just gone out to our customers. And they're all very nuanced, hands down, and they deserve to be, quite frankly. And so I would say, you know, in this current world, I feel closer to the customer than I have ever felt before. And I feel that that is sort of baked into our culture because I'm on the front lines and I'm talking to our customers often. So I feel that there's an intersection on that and how you study or get to know your customers that I think can go back and forth between the 2 different types.
So we're kind of heading in the direction of this question with your answers already. But, you know, talking about what B2B can borrow from B2C, obviously B2B is a specialized and nuanced beast. And so we need to build for the specific needs of audiences and products, et cetera. You know, from a B2B point of view, what have you built that's separate, that stands out, that is kind of flying in the face of B2C or potentially leading the way? And then again, you know, where have you seen issues where applying B2C thinking to B2B has gone terribly wrong?
Terribly wrong. Great question.
It doesn't have to be terribly wrong, just a little bit wrong.
I know, did you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I'm thinking about that one. Great questions. I think to start with your first point, one key insight for us is that our customers are benefiting the most from using Ripple's technology to build new business. So it's opening new markets, it's building new products and services, it's attracting new customers. So in that vein, the insight there is that they highly value our help in creating and helping them to market to their end customer. And Noah, you mentioned this too, is sort of always having that end customer in mind is really important. And so for us, we are ramping up the team really quickly to make sure that we have a B2B2C model and that we understand our customers and we're adding value along that chain and helping our customers thrive. And this isn't new. I mean, lots of industries think about this and do this. However, in order to do it well, I think you have to prioritize it, and you really have to be ready to do this. So, I mean, we're seeing early signs that this will be fruitful for us, but I think, you know, just understanding that end customer and being able to help your customers get there is important. And I'm going to still think on what's gone wrong.
Okay. Noah, give us some war stories.
Oh man, so what's gone wrong? Well, this campaign launched late, and then someone died. It was crazy. Thankfully, nobody dies.
Nobody ever dies.
Fail in marketing. That's something I love about it. So in terms of the nuances between B2B and B2C, and like what's different about B2B, something that's always attracted me to the space is the fact that you are selling a more complex product, and it takes a heavier lift. What I find interesting about that is that in some ways, like maybe this is going to sound weird, I've come to think of marketing B2B on Facebook and Instagram and other like digital platforms a little bit more like direct to mail in a weird way than digital, and I'll explain what I mean. In direct mail, those things tend to be for like credit products or something that's a bit of a heavy lift. You have to communicate a lot of information. And if you're marketing B2B on Facebook, you kind of take a similar approach. You've got, say you've got some feed video. That's like your envelope. You need to get somebody to not throw it away, just like you need to get somebody to stop scrolling and feed. When you click, something that we found works really well is actually taking someone from like a video ad, not straight to site, but instead taking them to like an interstitial. We have this product called Instant Experiences. It's like sort of a quick loading overlay. So you tap on an ad, and this overlay takes over the screen of your phone, and it's customizable. You can put any content you want in there. We did a few tests last year with a B2B advertiser that does sort of like tax prep type stuff related to travel. It's like work travel and tax prep around that. And we did this test where you started with a video ad and drove someone into just a site versus video to this interstitial to site. And in the interstitial, they put in just a little bit of information. It was almost like a mini brochure. But it was so fast to load that it didn't necessarily interrupt that flow. What it did was give someone a bit more information. That's like you've opened that envelope, you get the pamphlet. It's a similar type of approach that you take on Facebook. And they found that adding that interstitial, the ads performed almost 50% better than not adding it. It's a little bit against conventional wisdom, right? In B2C, it's all about speed. You get someone right through to the conversion right away. With something that's a heavier product, something that's much higher consideration, people tend to want that extra information. And what I've found is it's more about how you give it to them. If it doesn't feel like this hugely interruptive thing, they actually want that. It helps them make a decision to go further. So that's one thing where there's some nuance in B2B that I don't think exists quite the same way in B2C. Sure.
And like challenge-wise, like from the way that you guys are looking at B2B, from the biggest challenge that you have, like what do you perceive as that like biggest burning issue for you, Shanna, and like how are you overcoming that problem?
Yeah, I mean, for us right now, it is global data. Although Liam mentioned to me that he thinks he may have a solution for me. Maybe somebody do. We are a global company, and understanding our customers and accounts from a data point of view around the world tends to be challenging for us, especially Asia, as an example. I mean, we recently paused a campaign because we were getting IP addresses from Asia that were really blanketed by telcos. So we really weren't even getting in there to understand who from Asia was really following and on our website and responding to our campaigns. That in combination with localization strategy and content, increasingly important for us and a hard nut to crack. It really is, and being able to take your content and localizing it meaningfully in many different languages and serving it up it's a whole beast and a whole animal, and that's definitely a challenge. I would say another one, which probably is a challenge for all of us, I'm guessing, is GDPR. I think GDPR is making it difficult for marketers, easier on businesses and consumers, more difficult from us. And I think our space will get creative and figure out a way.
And Noah, from speaking with your clients,
Yeah.
what's the biggest issue the biggest challenge they're trying to solve, and how are they going about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to build off of what you talked about, Shanna, in terms of data, something that is a core tactic for marketing, not just B2B, but I'd say any high consideration product on a platform like Facebook, is finding a way to activate a first-party data strategy. What we've found over time is that, frankly, Facebook has a lot of data, but we're really, really good at predicting something that's immediate, not as good at predicting something that is like, a product with a long sales cycle where somebody, say, clicks and then they convert, but there might be months, right, between to sort of take that whole process to its completion. In B2C, a lot of times, these companies have a lot of personal information on people that it's very easy to match with Facebook. You can directly target people, you can build lookalikes. You absolutely need those capabilities to succeed in B2B, especially in performance, because as a company, the advertiser is going to be a lot smarter about who's the right fit for this product, or who is in a high consideration stage that we should serve them a certain kind of ad. The advertiser is going to know so much more than we ever will about that. The trick is that activating that in B2B can be very challenging, especially at a global scale, because you tend not to have the same level of personal email, personal phone number, things of that nature that you can match with a platform like Facebook. And so, there's all sorts of nuanced ways of getting to that information and activating that strategy. But it does take more creativity in how you handle the data, how you collect it, how you treat it, than it would in something like B2C.
Okay. And then Shanna, from your point of view at Ripple, in fact, give us a quick download on Ripple and what you're doing there, and from a kind of startup aspect, what challenges you've had to overcome, and how you're facing those challenges.
Yeah, so Ripple is about 6 years old. We're now 300 employees globally. We work with financial institutions to make their global payments cheaper, better, faster. And that's really important because increasingly there are more and more people who around the world want to send money home to their families, send money to their friends. And it takes a long time. Sometimes it doesn't arrive. The fees are high, for a lot of these folks who are working in another country. A big part of their paycheck when they're sending it home to family is just eaten in fees. And it doesn't need to be that way. Similarly for businesses who are becoming more global, they need to pay their developers, their contractors, their workers, et cetera, around the world in their local currency. And again, it's painful. And so Ripple is leveraging blockchain technology and digital assets, namely XRP, to help build a global payments network to remove friction from global payments around the world. So that's really sort of our mantra and what we're up to. The challenge and opportunity, I would say, there, and from a marketing perspective, is while our audience and who we are working with and selling to, if you will, is 100% financial institutions. It's B2B. But no one's ever done this before in this way. And if you're familiar with crypto or looking at that world, there are a whole lot of question marks around that. And so that means that Ripple is not just selling a technology project to a financial institution. We are working with regulators. We are working with policy in every country around the world to educate and influence so that they can provide the needed direction to financial institutions who are looking to them for, how do we use this? We want to, we're bought in. How can we make this work in a safe and
That's another layer of B2B audience that you have to address.
Exactly. And then of course we have the consumer side, which, to be clear, we're not selling to a consumer. However, consumers are watching the crypto space very carefully, and there's, frankly, some confusion around how that fits into the puzzle and into our product and offering and a global payments network. So essentially we're building a network. You know about this really well. Building networks and a network of network means that you have lots of audiences. And marketing to those audiences, especially when you're a tiny team and you're moving really fast, is kind of the fun yet challenging part of what we're doing.
Okay, and so we are running out of time, but I do want to ask Noah, I'd be remiss not getting some tips of innovation that you're seeing of how your clients are leveraging your platform and kind of social in general.
Totally. So a big thing that's come up, I'd say, in the past couple of months has been all around machine learning. You know, especially in the B2C space, Facebook has all these tools that are really built off of robust machine learning systems to personalize ads, and you know, you get great returns out of that. You get more conversions, you get more sales. In B2B, it's not necessarily that there isn't a way to do that, but it takes a little bit more nuance in terms of the inputs into those systems. And so something that the more innovative advertisers that I'm working with are experimenting with now is how do we build more automation, more machine learning capabilities into our campaigns. You know, I think if, in my mind, if like, you know, 2018, I know I was talking about this before, was like the year of creative in B2B. How do you stand up the right creative strategy on a platform like Facebook? 2019 is probably going to be all about AI and automation, and how do you personalize something like white paper content, webinar content, all of that sort of lead generation content that B2B marketers have. It's going in that direction and figuring that out.
Okay. So just before we go to questions from the audience, Shanna, just building on the innovation and the technology aspect, from your point of view, what's going to be your focus from a technology point of view, and how does that relate back to your marketing principles and how you're going to approach your audiences?
Yeah, video is huge for us. You mentioned video a couple times. I think I recently read a stat that by 2020, 82% of all content on the web will be video. So how we use that in a really smart manner, as well as social media marketing on the B2B side. I heard someone at my company recently say, our customers don't use video or social in their sales cycle, and I plan to completely debunk that this year.
Okay. Well, with that, I don't know if any of you put questions in on the iPad, but I don't believe we have the iPad, so those questions are not going to be read out. But I think there's people in the audience. I can't see very well, but if you want to raise your hand if you have a question, someone should appear with a mic.
I would appear with a mic, so if you put your hand up, I will come to you.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Any questions? We have one at the back.
Hi. So a lot of people think that you can't do B2B on Facebook, being more of a personal platform. Can you comment on that and how maybe the lead form ad type could be a part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of, I think, a misconception, and certainly one that, you know, I've heard before. Frankly, all of the marketers I'm working with right now are B2B marketers, and lead generation on Facebook is a huge part of what they do with us. That involves our lead form product, which is sort of an automatic form fill product. It also involves things like getting people to sign up for trials, for demos, things like that, even getting them to sign up for software subscriptions. I think that where a lot of the misconception actually comes from is that when people start out running B2B campaigns on Facebook, they start out thinking that they can take the same sort of, I guess I'll call them lightweight or creatively lightweight tactics that you use in search and display, and take those same assets and just sort of slap them onto the platform, and that's going to work just fine. And the truth is, you know, for better or worse, it takes a bit of a unique approach. It takes some testing, and it takes treating, you know, Facebook and Instagram, almost treating them seriously as a medium and designing marketing, you know, for that medium. The partners that I've worked with who have really leaned into that have seen amazing success and have, you know, been able to get lower CPLs and more lead volume than in, you know, in other channels. There's one tech company that I work with now that it's us and its affiliates, and that's like their whole, you know, their whole lead gen program. Mm-hmm. So I think I understand why people don't think that, well, maybe Facebook isn't the right place for B2B. It's a consumer platform. In terms of the metrics and the performance, I just haven't seen that play out. There's been too many success stories that I've had the, I think the luck to be a part of that would debunk that for me personally.
Okay, so let's stop him pitching now and take another question from the audience. Any more?
You guys, I'm just going to pitch more if you don't ask a question. So please.
Could you share with us some experience with the third-party data partnering in terms of B2B marketing, if in any of your experience there's some? Third-party or second-party data partnership?
You want to take this one?
Yeah, third-party data in terms of B2B. My current world, we're not doing a ton of that. I mentioned that we try to supplement some in tracking with third-party data, and where we didn't have a lot of success is for companies outside the US. So that's one area where we haven't been great. I would say another area where we do supplement, though, is kind of further down the sales funnel for us. So once we have information about a company that we have acquired, then how do we enrich that data to get more information that helps our sales development reps really get on the phone and help further qualify, is this a good potential customer for us? And all of that is infused within Salesforce and has been really effective.
And Noah, do you want to talk briefly about Facebook and third-party data and where we are today?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. Facebook went through this progression where if you go back probably about 2 years ago, we had all these partnerships with third-party data providers, including LiveRamp. We had a really deep partnership with LiveRamp. And what happened was we decided, I guess in like early 2018, that it wasn't really right for us to have those partnerships anymore, because it meant that we were acting as this sort of data middleman. And we couldn't guarantee that the partners who were bringing third-party data onto our platform were, curating it in the right way. We had we were taking on a lot of liability that we weren't comfortable with. It's not to say that LiveRamp or these other companies were doing anything bad. They obviously weren't. It was more, what if something happens, then we're on the hook for that. And so when we had those partnerships, there were a lot of B2B companies actually using third-party data for targeting, firmographics, sort of your role within a company, all types of things. Now, it's a little bit different in that we still encourage B2B marketers to work with third parties because they're just going to have data that we don't. The difference now is that work happens outside of our platform and then sort of makes its way into our
And the decision is being made by somebody else outside the platform.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think it's probably safer for all parties involved for the advertiser to be judging the quality and where that sort of the provenance of that data than it is for Facebook. We shouldn't really be arbitrating that.
Okay. Okay. And I think we have one more question at the front.
This is for Noah. Noah, I'm not sure if you'd be open to share because I haven't heard any company names, but I would be interested in following the brands on Facebook that you find are doing a good job with B2B marketing.
That's a great question. There's a couple that I certainly follow that I think are doing interesting work. Microsoft has done some really great stuff, both on the brand side and on the direct response side. The ads I see from them on the platform tend to be on what I think is kind of more on the cutting edge. IBM is another. They did some really, really fun stuff on Instagram last year with Instagram stories. They had this campaign around of their cloud services that they designed all this video that was like really, really mobile first video. It was beautiful vertical video. I'm trying to think of, those are the two that really jump out to me. I don't know, maybe before the end of this, if one pops up, I'll just like scream it out.
Lower market, not so huge.
Oh.
People with normal size budget.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I guess I wouldn't want people leaving this panel thinking that like only the big brands can do interesting work. We actually launched a whole bunch of tools in the past year and a half to help marketers just go into our interface and like load up a bunch of photographs and like actually create animation and add text and things like that. It matters a lot to us that like the long tail gets these tools and these opportunities and not just the big brands. One that I've actually seen in my own feed a lot lately is Autodesk. They've done some really cool stuff. It's like architectural drafting software. That's what I studied in school, and so I still follow some of those things. They've done some really interesting things with animation. It's simple. It's not like anything super sexy, but it's just enough to kind of get me to lean in. One I saw just yesterday was a company called Xero. They're sort of, I guess they're like accounting software. They had some really
X.r.p.
Yes, x.r.p. They did some really interesting short form animation where like you start with a spreadsheet and it sort of like dissipates away. A lot of it, I think, is just about, you know, you say video and it's kind of a loaded word. It doesn't mean you have to go out and do a big expensive shoot. If you can find some ways to introduce simple motion graphics into what you're doing, that can have a really, really big impact on performance.
Okay. So we are now over time, so I'm going to close this with a final question so that the audience get a takeaway. So if there's one thing that a B2B or a consumer marketer should be doing differently today, what is it, Shanna?
Oh gosh, continue to know your customer. Do not rinse and repeat. Take risk, go bold.
No?
Yeah, I'd say let the passion for your own product show in the marketing. I think a lot of B2Bs, like, I don't know, they make the mistake of thinking people don't find this necessarily all that sexy when, in my experience as someone who was a customer of these products, that's pretty far from the truth. So if you can do that in your brand ads and your direct response ads, whatever you're doing, I think that's a good thing.
Great. Thanks, everybody.